Just 2 seasons ago, Arizona quarterback Khalil Tate was highly regarded as the favorite to win the Heisman Trophy entering the 2018 season. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated where it said infamously, and I quote, "He is the nation's best quarterback, hand him the Heisman." Less than 2 years later, Tate didn't even come close to a Heisman race, lost his starting job, and went undrafted in the 2020 NFL Draft. So in less than 2 years, how did arguably the most exciting and electrifying quarterback in the country go from a Heisman favorite to an undrafted player? Let's take a look back at what went wrong with Khalil Tate. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already and turn on those notifications so you never miss a video. Khalil Tate was a 4-star prospect from Junipero Serra High School in Gardena, California. He was rated the number 11 athlete of his class. Tate became the starter his junior season and really began to put himself on the map. During his junior campaign, Tate threw for nearly 1,400 yards and 17 touchdowns, while rushing for 1,300 yards and 17 touchdowns. His senior season was even more impressive as he threw for over 2,000 yards and 17 touchdowns while rushing for 2,100 yards and 26 touchdowns on the ground. This caught the eyes of teams across the country as he had offers from teams such as USC, UCLA, Florida State, Texas A&M, Nebraska, Boise State, and more. Ultimately, he chose Arizona, where he had hopes of becoming their starting quarterback. Many schools view Tate as an athlete, more suited to play receiver or defensive back, but that's not how Khalil Tate viewed himself. He enrolled at Arizona in January 2016 as a 17-year-old. He was young for his class, not turning 18 until October that year. Though he came to Arizona to play quarterback, he still sat behind Anu Solomon and Brandon Dawkins on the depth chart. Sitting as the third-string quarterback, Tate likely wasn't going to see the field anytime soon during his freshman year, but injuries led him to see action. Khalil Tate appeared in 7 games, including a start against the USC Trojans. Tate completed 7 of 18 passes for 58 yards while throwing an interception, though he did rush for 72 yards and a touchdown. Aside from his start, Tate played during meaningless minutes in 2016. For the year, he completed 18 of his 45 passes for 243 yards. He had 3 passing touchdowns, 3 interceptions, while also running for 243 yards. Tate entered the 2017 campaign as the backup to Brandon Dawkins. Through the first month, Tate didn't see much action. He threw the ball 9 times and ran it only 10. Then came the night of October 7th, 2017. Though he was struggling for the season, Brandon Dawkins remained the starter for the Wildcats. On the 9th snap of Arizona's first offensive possession, Dawkins tucked the football, ran towards the near sideline, and took a late hit out of bounds. He would be out for the remainder of the game, and little did he know, the rest of the season. Khalil Tate came in to replace him, and what fans saw on the field that night was magical. Tate gave us one of the greatest single-game performances from a starting quarterback in FBS history. He rushed for a total of 327 yards, the most ever in a game by a quarterback. On the night, he had 327 rushing yards with 4 rushing touchdowns. He also completed 12 of 13 passes for 150 yards and a touchdown. Tate's heroics led the Wildcats to a win over the Buffaloes. And just like that, Khalil Tate was an overnight sensation. This would be the start of one of the greatest 4-week stretches we've seen in recent memory from a quarterback. After his performance against Colorado, Tate was named the Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Week. This would be the first of 4 consecutive weeks in which he'd be named the conference's top offensive player. Not only did he win the award in 4 consecutive weeks, he led the Wildcats to 4 consecutive wins. The following week against UCLA, Tate threw for 150 yards and a touchdown while rushing for 230 yards and 2 touchdowns. The next week on the road at Cal, 166 passing yards for 2 touchdowns with 137 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Then, against Washington State, he threw for 275 yards on only 10 completions. He threw 2 touchdowns while rushing for 146 yards and a touchdown as well. His streak of wins and Player of the Week awards came to an end the following week as the Wildcats fell to USC. Though Arizona lost, Khalil Tate still threw for 146 yards with 2 touchdowns while rushing for 161 yards and a touchdown. Arizona got back to their winning ways the following week as Tate led the Wildcats to a win over Oregon State. How did he do that game? You know, he only rushed for 206 yards and 2 touchdowns. Khalil Tate's best passing game of the year came in their final game against Purdue. Arizona lost, but they didn't go down without a fight. Tate threw for over 300 yards and 5 touchdowns, both career highs for him at the time. Tate would finish the season with over 1,400 rushing yards, 1,600 passing yards, and 26 total touchdowns, despite only playing in 9 full games. Arizona didn't finish the season the way they'd like to, but they had momentum rolling into the 2018 year. Then, on January 2nd, 2018, Arizona made a decision that many think altered Khalil Tate's future with the Wildcats. Arizona fired head coach Rich Rodriguez on January 2nd, 2018. Later that month, Tate would lose his biggest advocate, quarterbacks coach Rod Smith, who took the offensive coordinator position at Illinois. Tate also posted a tweet during the search for Rodriguez's replacement that might have influenced the selection of his successor. On January 12th, the same day that the Star reported that Navy's Ken Niumatalolo had emerged as the leading candidate for the job, Tate tweeted the following: "I didn't come to Arizona to run the triple option." He then deleted the tweet, but the message had been sent. Ultimately, Arizona opted not to hire Niumatalolo, but instead, they hired former Texas A&M head coach Kevin Sumlin. At the time, it seemed like a dream hire. Sumlin had experience coaching some of the top quarterbacks in the country, as he had previous experience with Case Keenum and Heisman-winning quarterback Johnny Manziel. Who better to take Tate's game to an even higher level? Though Arizona received praise for the hire, there were still decisions as to whether or not Tate had any impact on the move. Here's what Arizona President Dr. Robert Robbins said to Bleacher Report: "I want our student athletes to have a voice. I want them to be disruptive problem solvers." Khalil Tate shared his thoughts about what he meant when he tweeted that out. "I knew exactly what I was doing when I tweeted that out. I don't do Twitter. When I tweet something, I download the app, tweet, then delete the app from my phone. So when I tweet, it's important. I had to make sure I was heard, make sure the team was heard, because my teammates didn't want to run the triple option either. So the idea was to tweet it out, let it get traction, then delete it. I knew people reading it would say, 'Why did he delete it?' But that just magnifies it more. I didn't want to go about the situation and then just be, okay, he's the new coach, I don't care,' because I did care. We did care as a team. I knew tweeting that would create a buzz and maybe not get him as our coach. I think Ken Niumatalolo is a great coach. It's nothing against him, but I think it was just important to say what I had to say and let everyone know that we're not going to be quiet and let things happen. We're going to be heard." Kevin Sumlin then hired Noel Mazzoni to be the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach for Arizona, which also seemed like a perfect move. Although he had primarily mentored pocket quarterbacks, Mazzoni coached Brett Hundley from 2012 to 2014 when he averaged almost 12 rushing attempts per game, as well as Trevor Knight in 2016 when he finished the season with 614 rushing yards and 10 rushing touchdowns. The expectations were high for Khalil Tate and the Wildcats entering the 2018 campaign. Tate was coming off a historic season. Kevin Sumlin was the new coach, along with a brand new offensive coaching staff. Prior to the season beginning in August, Tate was on the cover of the College Football Preview edition of Sports Illustrated. "He's the nation's best quarterback, hand him the Heisman." That's what it said on the front cover of Sports Illustrated. As if the expectations weren't already high enough, Tate now had the entire country wanting to tune in to see his every snap. And maybe for Khalil Tate, the spotlight was just too bright for him. Johnny Manziel had 345 rushing attempts during the 2012 and 2013 seasons under Kevin Sumlin. Brett Hundley and Trevor Knight, they both ran plenty of zone read plays under Mazzoni. What I'm trying to say is, these coaches had their quarterbacks run the ball a lot. With Khalil Tate, something changed. Did they want him to become a more complete quarterback? Of course, so did Tate. But the game plan for the 2018 opener against BYU took it too far. And many think that was the beginning of the downfall of Khalil Tate. He had only 8 rushing attempts and picked up only 14 yards on the ground. He threw the ball though, 34 times to be exact, which was the second most of his career at the time. Arizona lost and they were 0-1 to start the season. Kevin Sumlin acknowledged the following week that the Wildcats needed to call more designed QB runs, but on the first series the next week at Houston, Tate tweaked his left ankle. He wasn't quite right the rest of the day. He rushed for 8 yards on 7 carries. He threw 2 interceptions and completed just over half of his passes. Arizona lost 45-18 and they were now 0-2. Not only did it look like Arizona's season was already a wash, but it looked like Tate's Heisman hopes were a wash as well. Arizona picked up back-to-back wins, but Tate still wasn't running the ball well at all. Over those 2 games versus Southern Utah and Oregon State, Tate ran for 9 yards on 8 carries. Was the offensive plan just not working for Tate under these new coaches? Or was he maybe trying to hide a severe ankle injury? Khalil Tate downplayed it during the season, but said the following summer that it was very difficult to play through the ankle and other bumps and bruises. He looked tentative. Why wasn't he running as often or as forcefully? Was it the ankle? Or was it something else? Now, this is just a theory that I've seen out there, but someone says that someone probably got a hold of Khalil Tate, told him he was a legit NFL prospect, and essentially told him, you gotta be more careful, you gotta stay healthy. He can no longer bang through defenders, he had to run out of bounds, and with this ankle injury, it essentially gave him an excuse to do so. Halfway through the season, Tate's Heisman chances were completely shot, and instead of fighting for a chance to play for the Pac-12 title game, Arizona would be fighting the rest of the season just to become bowl eligible. The injury worsened at Utah, forcing Tate to miss most of that game. He completed 1 of 4 passes and ran for only 3 yards on 2 attempts before exiting the game. He also missed the following contest against UCLA due to the ankle injury. He returned the following week against Oregon and helped the Wildcats upset the Ducks. He then had the best game of his season against Colorado, completing 17 of 22 passes for 350 yards with 5 touchdowns. Tate would have easily won the Heisman if he got the chance to play Colorado every week. At that point, Arizona needed just 1 win in its final 2 games to become bowl eligible. It didn't happen in Washington State, where Tate threw for 294 yards and 4 touchdowns, but everything was trending in the right direction against Arizona State to close out the season. Now, it looked like as if they'd become bowl eligible, as Arizona had a 40-21 fourth quarter lead. A combination of overly conservative play calling and turnovers, including a Khalil Tate interception, doomed the Wildcats. Arizona State came back to win the game, ending Arizona's season. Fun fact, I was actually at that game in Tucson, and it was frickin' awesome. The 2018 season showed cracks in Tate's game and raised concerns about whether or not he could get any better the following year. He didn't handle losing well, often avoiding answering post-game questions about his performance during losses. It wasn't a good look for Tate. Whether or not he would be back at Arizona for his senior season became the next twist in the drama. He requested an evaluation from the NFL, which recommended that he return to school. Then, all of a sudden, a transfer rumor surfaced, and many wondered whether or not Tate would finish his career in Tucson. Kevin Sumlin and Tate's family concluded that it was the best move for him to come back and try to get better with the Wildcats. As poorly as 2018 went, Tate improved his touchdown-interception ratio from 14-9 to 26-8. His 26 touchdown passes were 2 shy of the Arizona record. With another year in the system, improved health, and a better relationship with his coaches, who acknowledged growing pains during year 1, Tate seemed well positioned to improve and finish his career on a high note. Arizona opened the 2019 season with a loss on the road at Hawaii in an absolute crazy game. Tate passed for a career-high 361 yards, but threw a critical red zone interception and came within 1 yard of scoring the game-tying touchdown on the last play of the game from the 31-yard line. In addition to throwing a career-high in yards, he also rushed for over 100 yards for the first time since 2017. The following week against Northern Arizona, Tate ran the ball only 2 times for 1 yard. He then followed that up by running for over 100 yards the following week at Texas Tech. Of his 129 yards, 84 of them came on 1 play, a vintage Khalil Tate run that resulted in a touchdown. He then missed the UCLA game because of a hamstring injury suffered late in the game against the Red Raiders. Tate returned against Colorado, and to no surprise, he torched them. He didn't rush for 300 plus yards, but he did throw for a career-high 400 yards to go along with 3 touchdowns. 1 week later, Tate had the worst game of his career. Washington blitzed him like no other opponent ever had, and neither Tate nor his offensive line could deal with it. Khalil Tate and the Wildcats would not be the same after that 51-27 loss. He finished the game with negative 28 rushing yards. That's right, negative 28 rushing yards. Tate got pulled late against Washington. He also got pulled against USC in his hometown after failing to generate a single scoring drive. He threw for 51 yards and yet again was off on the ground. He had negative 27 rushing yards, but I guess you could say he improved compared to the previous week. He platooned with freshman Grant Gunnell the rest of the way, and didn't even get the start on senior night against Utah. Tate did start against Arizona State to finish the season, playing the entire game while throwing for 228 yards, 2 touchdowns, but also having 3 interceptions. The only 3-pick game of his career. Yet again, Arizona didn't make a bowl game, and Tate's time at Arizona had come to an end. He finished the 2019 season with just under 2,000 passing yards to go along with 14 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. He rushed for 413 yards and 3 touchdowns, averaging only 4.5 yards per rush. After rushing for 1,400 yards in 9 games in 2017, Tate rushed for only 637 yards over his final 2 seasons. The 2020 NFL Draft went by, and Khalil Tate went undrafted. He eventually signed a free agent contract with the Philadelphia Eagles, but as a wide receiver. So, looking back at Khalil Tate's career, what exactly was it that went wrong? Was it the coaching? Was it his ankle? Was it his confidence? I guess that's something we just may never get the answer to. The talent was clearly there, but he just couldn't replicate what he did in 2017. Khalil Tate finishes his Arizona career first in total touchdowns with 75, third in passing touchdowns with 57, third in total yards with 8,600, and fifth in passing yards with 6,300. So it's safe to say Khalil Tate left his mark in Arizona. Could Khalil Tate have ever won a Heisman? I think he could have. Could he have led Arizona to a Pac-12 title game during those last few seasons? I legitimately think he could. Unfortunately, this is just going to go down as one of those what-ifs in college football history. Sadly, we'll never know just how good Khalil Tate could have been. However, he'll always have that incredible 2017 run.